proceed with our first panel discussion of the day, topic being innovations in A2P messaging, APIs, and platforms. And a moderator for the session, once again, ladies and gentlemen, with a huge round of applause, Dario Betty from MEF. Come on, a huge round of applause for him, please. I would like to invite on stage our esteemed panelist, Zafar Owaisi from Al Muqeet. A huge round of applause. Tushit Seth from Etisalat by E&. Come on, ladies and gentlemen. Murthy Muniappa from GTS Tech Labs. John Shua from Twilio. And Sandeep Prakash from Mob Texting. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome in the huge round of applause. Requesting you all to please adhere to the 45 minutes time limit given. We're going to have a teleprompter giving you the time left. It's a countdown. Also, ladies and gentlemen, please note, we will try and have a Q&A after each session, the last 5 minutes. Just in case we are a little behind the schedule, requesting you all, we have a networking as well as lunchtime. So you can have your Q&A on a one-on-one session. Plus, later, before the high tea, before we close, we're going to have a Q&A session. Thank you. Over to you, Dario.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And in case you're wondering, I'm not going to be here a whole day. I'm going to let other people come in. But I could not be here for this debate. I had to squeeze in somehow because it's too interesting. So all the entire day is going to be innovations. And we're open talking about the innovations that are happening in this market. And we're doing it from multiple perspectives. As a matter of fact, next I'm going to ask our esteemed speakers to show why they've been picked, because they are all representing a different part of the industry. So, but let's make it more difficult, because that's going to be the beginning of a very intense day. So I'm going to ask you to, if you give a quick, some of your names, some of your companies, very famous, some of the other companies might be potentially new to people. Could you explain in a few words what you do as a company, what you are, but specifically is where you innovate? That's the first questions. Now, I'm going to be starting from, where should we do it? Not from Murthy, because I think your Tech Labs is probably too easy to talk about innovations for you, but I'm going to start from one of our CPaaS players from this side. Well, John Stewart, can you introduce Twilio, in case we need it, yourself, and what do you see yourself as innovations happening right now?
Yeah, thank you.
Let's see if it's on. Yeah, that one.
Thank you very much, MEF, and for organizing this. Yeah, and also we have GTS for hosting us here in India, Mumbai. Most of us would know Twilio. We sell, the only thing that we sell is really trust. Okay, that's what my previous CEO used to say, all right, when we were onboarding. The only thing that we sell is trust. And we know that in our industry, that is debiting quite a bit, and we want to make sure that we go back to the good old days. The things that we do in Twilio, it's quite a lot. Right now, we have sort of what we call moved on to mainly the software besides the messaging platforms. And there are many of these new innovations that come up as as the industry leader. So we'll talk about that as we go along. Yeah, thanks, Dario.
So next, Zafir from Amuqit.
Hello, everyone, and thanks, MEF, GTS, for hosting us here. We intend to empower all the messaging companies out there with the technology and the innovations we do into the enterprise SMS aggregation and the overall carrier aggregation of the SMS. In fact, we are focused on some CPaaS developments as well. So that's what we do for the industry, and we'll be talking about innovations later on during the session.
So you work next step, I understand. So your role is between the CPaaS and some of those enterprises out there. So looking at the next stage of interactions.
So firstly, I would like to thank MEF team and the GTS team again for having us. And you started off with fantastic insights. When you're talking about innovation, you're talking about business messaging, it kind of really highlights and points out where exactly we're headed as an industry. So great insights on that one. I mean, Etisalat is not new to anybody, I think. But just to kind of put it out there, we rebranded ourselves from Etisalat to EAND. And EAND is a global technology conglomerate, obviously spread across 16 countries, including UAE, with over 170 million subscribers. And I think I'm proud to say that as Etisalat, EAND rather, is we have been showing monumental growth year on year in terms of profitability and in terms of revenue as well. And last year, 2023, we clocked 53.8 billion dirhams as our revenue as well. So our group CEO, Hatem, he designed this whole, I think he foresee this aspect that we need to really reorient ourselves. And we are very traditional telco. And I think here, I'm probably the only telco guy, right? So we're very traditional telco, where we are heavy on the infrastructure network. And it was his vision to transition and pivot from being a traditional telco to a techco. And we've obviously, taken drastic steps when it comes to innovation. We have in fact also launched an innovation hub to be very closer to the startup ecosystem in UAE and Saudi. When it comes to the messaging business, and we also have our platform called EngageX, which is basically a CPaaS platform tapping into the enterprises within UAE, Saudi, and other markets. So our idea is to go more local. That's where we see the growth in the market, and then basically fly from there. In terms of our strategy, we've kind of, simplified it down in two pieces when it comes to A2P messaging. Is we want to look at A2P monetization to offer a clear, channel of communication to the enterprises. And I kind of really concur with what my friend said, John, is trust is a very, very important element of this whole ecosystem. So that needs to be retained for the growth to be seen. And the second aspect, as I mentioned, is we see from the CPaaS side of the business, where we are also including conversational AI now as part of our, we are using different language modules to basically see and tap into the consumer business as well. So that's about it.
Thank you.
Next, Sandeep.
Thank you, Dario. Good morning, everyone, and big thanks to MEF and GTS teams to put this together. I'll try and interweave the theme of innovation into my introduction itself without taking too much time. I obviously represent what you read, mob texting. Equally on the website for the event, it says BICS. Both are true. In essence, we're also part of a large group. We're part of the Proximus group, which is one of the large telco groups in Europe. And each one of them helps us get to the answer of innovation in its own sense. In India, as mob texting is the brand that we carry, we've got a large foray into enterprise, CPaaS worlds. As BICS, we're into international carrier services, whether it's voice, SMS, or more contemporary telco services. And then obviously as a telco, we do what we do. And the way we define innovation is also at these levels. We look at innovation as two layers to it. One is an external induced innovation. Innovation to adapt to market, and really sometimes these are irreversible changes when it happens from an external world. I mean, for example, take a look at 2019 to 2022, the COVID things, right? The things that happened during that time are almost irreversible now. We don't go back to work every day. We Skypes and Teams and Hangouts are the place where we work. And these matter for the world that we all kind of belong to. And these are external induced change and in some way leap of faith. So innovation is required to adapt to that. And whoever kind of is timely and best suited kind of wins the race. And it's always never the zero-sum game. There's no one winner anyway. And the second aspect of it is internal induced and what I categorize more as incremental changes derived from innovations. And these are smaller, 0.5%, 1% gains that each one of us kind of have to make in our business lines, whether it is commercial in its nature, whether it is, technology adoption, all of these are incremental changes. So, combination of these two kind of, changes and the structure of the organization, as I defined earlier, from mob texting to BIX to Proximus, the combination of this and the leverage that we use is the biggest lever that we have in our approach and strategy towards innovation.
More, I mean, as I kept you for last, but the tech labs gives the way. So innovation is probably something that you do.
So the penalty for being a last person, like I get more time to talk? Okay. Thank you, MEF, for inviting a tech lab here. I'm Murthy, part of GTS Tech Lab team, playing a role of Chief Innovation Officer, a position which is not common in many companies, but it is very, very important, crucial for tech labs, because as the name says, the name itself has, we are a laboratory for the GTS technology, right? So it's very important for our tech labs to bring in innovative solutions to support not only our GTS, but the operators as well in enhancing their business. And then, as I said, in the name itself, we have the laboratory. It is not about what we do in comparison with the competitors. It is about how we do the same solutions. So that's how we look at in our tech labs, especially the things that we are working on right now is artificial intelligence-based fraud management. So coming to the innovation part, see, my perspective of A2P platform and APIs, I guess most of the people are looking at what can be done as part of what can be done to improve further on the platform and A2P API messaging to enhance this business. But the way I look at it is less of a platform and A2P API itself, but is more of going beyond the use cases of what we already have. Right now, as the name says, it's A2P. It's for people. But the way we are looking at within our tech labs is how can it be A2X? I think it's a tech lab is the one which is thinking of probably the concept of A2X, probably the first time in the world. So when I say A2X, it's not just a fancy name. I come from various technology background, including one of my other companies into IoT and AI. The way I look at is, X stands for beyond like people. Going forward in the future, I see the X is getting expanded beyond people, including the devices and the machines. I don't want to get into the details of how this is going to be used because this is something like we're working on as part of the IP. But just to let you know, I'm kind of excited to share certain things as well. So many people have not discovered how this messaging can be used both for the security as well as enabling its capability using the messages for the devices. One of the biggest challenges that until recently the IoT or the devices is facing was that considering the power that is required, it was NB IoT is the only option for many IoT cases. But if not, if you don't have NB-IoT, then you're going to use, the power gobbling data link. That's why one of the reasons many of the IoT devices are not able to use its features the way it is supposed to be. But we see an opportunity to use the messages, especially the SMS, because the device doesn't have to lock into expensive voice channel or a data channel, but you can still use SMS to enable certain features. First of all, why are we using in many cases SMS, OTP, right? It is again second level of authentication, right? Nobody is thinking yet. I did a research, nobody is thinking yet. How do we use SMS in the devices, enabling that security as a second level of authentication to probably enable certain features, right? And there is a possibility. I think the amount of devices that we're going to be surrounded with us in the next 5 to 10 years is going to be probably 5 to 10 times more than the phones that we have, which we use it for the purpose of people communication. Then imagine how much of opportunity that we have in the messaging, 10 times more business opportunities, right? So this is how we need to look at it, and this is what Tech Lab is after in the innovation. How can we make this instead of A2P, it is A2X. So the innovation is not just in the platform and the API, it is the use cases that makes it more innovative. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thanks for the multiple, feel free to clap off round. Thanks for the multiple perspective we've heard. And I'm trying to, on the fly, we've heard about moving away from persons even to software, integrations into services and other things to things, messaging as a platform. We've heard about the importance of trust. We heard about how even operators trust, but it's even changing the definitions of an operator themselves. E-end, there's an end ... There seems to be an innovation in itself. And we heard from Obi Texting as well, and there was Sandeep as well. In innovation is also a question of efficiencies, how to do things faster. And we heard about integration into softwares. A lot of things on the plate. But let's focus back on some of the original titles, which is APIs and platforms. Now, let me try to be at least a bit controversial. The API and platforms as innovations, isn't that what the CPaaS industry should be today? Isn't that what we already have? I mean, we talk about it as innovations. Why is it just, why is it? I'll start with one of the CPaaS players here, but then I'll go to Mobitex next. So Sandeep, you can keep. Why should you, as a CPaaS, looking at APIs and platforms? Aren't you already doing it?
Yeah, definitely, right? We are always on, when Twilio started about 12, 15 years ago, I think we were sort of the part of the big ecosystem of the APIs. I think as messaging platforms evolve, customers are also looking at new ways to do new things, right? And I think more innovations as we come along, whether in terms of, shaping, tagging the traffic, making sure there's, fraud filtering, etc., makes it more complex. And essentially, I think the customers are looking to do much more on APIs, right? And that's where innovations have to come in because the customers are asking for it.
Oh, great. Well, in that case, Sandeep, I did say that I'll pick on you as well as part of a big group and as well as an operator here at Mobitex. What's APIs and platforms for you? Is that the next thing?
Sure. I mean, the question of API to follow with John and Twilio, where Twilio and API are kind of synonymous for the last decades, is a tough one to follow, and I can only compliment him rather than counter him on any point. But I'll use one more reference. I mean, Dario, I think you guys have one more session later in the day called Telco to Techco, right? So that essentially is your A2P to API or A2P to platform journey. Essentially, I mean, we've all heard software is eating the world, right? So, and telco is a lot, preceding industry to, innovations in, tech. And APIs come from the tech world. APIs come from software world. So I think all of us, in some way, involved in the, telecom industry, have now adopted API. It's now about how do you productize that? How do you platformize that to make sure that the end customers or the users are equally benefiting from the innovations? It's a delivery channel which is a lot more streamlined and frictionless to reach to the end customer or the user. So I think from a API world in itself, the basic foundational adoption has already taken place. Now it's about, if you follow the software world, and a lot of my background, I'm sure Murthy will, corroborate here as well, is the fact that in the technology and software world, APIs have gone ahead. I mean, they've, serverless architecture to microservices to, technology agnostic APIs, where we are able to break things down, I think a good example is how do you serve banks in a most secure world? And all of us from an A2P world know that you cannot put that everything onto the cloud. You've got to have something on the data centers that needs still communications. So it's the world of breaking things down into minute, or in software world, what is called containerization, right? So you put things into containers, and containers are then shipped to different parts of the architecture so that they can do individual elements much more efficiently. I think that is where the journey from A2P to API is underway already. The journey from APIs, a bunch of APIs to a robust, standardized platform journey is, I think, what we are going to undertake, now and onwards. And that platformization, where whether it is simple A2P, whether it is the more contemporary channels of WhatsApp, or even things which have more closely relation to A2P and SMS like RCS, or the software world of it, the services world of it, of fraud, of M2M, IoT, all of that becoming a singular platform where enterprises or MNOs can really come on board and start seeing the benefits is the journey we will look ahead. I think that's where, I'll allude to the fact, that's where we look at, how mob texting, BIX, Proximus kind of collaborates as well. We here in mob texting almost work like a software company. We are the tech and R&D powerhouse, similar to what Murthy kind of said with what Tex Labs is, while BIX kind of takes care of the internationalization of that. Well, obviously, we've got the MNO and the telco elements of it, which reaches the scale that it, at the end of the day, has to.
Well, thank you. So bringing it to Zafir, because we heard about the softwareizations of industry now. It's almost about what platform is. But you taking some of the software and integrate it to the next level. Are the end users ready for platforms and APIs? You deal with some of the large companies, the banks, but potentially SMEs as well. I don't know, but are they ready? Is it what is coming next from the other side? The demand for APIs and platforms?
All right, I'll take a while for this. See, in terms of we're talking about the subject of the messaging platforms. So for the platforms itself, we have different segments. We have the enterprise side and then the wholesale side of it. If we look at the enterprise side, we have been looking at the most of the larger traffic sources have been large OTT operators, banks and all. But I can see that SMEs are a bit struggling in terms of having that communication systems because they don't want to invest more into creating something. So I believe that if the platforms would have more on-the-fly plugins or certain micro apps to be used for their, say, payment reminders or, for subscriptions, for promotions and all. So having such micro apps within the platforms to address the wholesale, to address the enterprises and to tap into the smaller, SMEs which are not currently using either CPaaS channels or SMS to be specific. So I think there's a lot of need to have, these modules available for the enterprises, at a fast pace so that they can be onboarded and we can have new streams of the traffic coming in. So that's for the enterprise side. And of course, for the wholesale side, there are many things we have to work out. So I'll precisely touch the point of SMS. So with these enterprises and the wholesale traffic coming in for the SMS and with the escalating prices we have, skyrocketing prices for SMS, there is a need of people are innovating in different ways of bringing down that cost. But I would believe that we need to ensure that the quality we are serving in terms of the SMS, that has to be, the platforms have to have certain modules or features or quality testing services or solutions within itself to have people to regain that trust from the enterprises into that channel. And I would believe that with RCS standards, it's a standard API. So in the future, I think that RCS taking in a shape of, we are also working in a way of creating an aggregation platform for the RCS as well. So as I said, like SMEs, and there are other business sectors which are not using CPaaS or for that matter SMS. So those people need to be, those traffic streams that need to be added to what we already have in the market.
Great. So we heard importance of software. Of softwareizations, we've heard how we need to lift it up a bit, the preparations, if you want as well, the expectations that there is the level of security and applications development. Well, I'll go to Murthy and right now. So, but you mentioned something before about fraud and even AI, if I remember at the beginning. Do you think that the APIs and platforms can help in making these, as we heard, a more secure environment for delivery of services? Are we helping the industry with APIs and platforms?
Yeah, it's unfortunately the core network, which is complex and developed by the large companies of the past, it's as good as it's called legacy, You hardly see any quick changes in the core network, the way the applications.
Lazy, did I get right?
Sorry?
Did you say lazy? Or legacy?
Legacy,
Sorry, thanks.
yeah.
But I like lazy too.
I mean,
might
yeah,
use that.
it goes as well synonymously for whatever the reason. So, because of its telco grade, the telco grade quality of the core network, they can't quickly change their softwares, the core network, the way the application we can do outside. And it is very difficult to have innovation within the core network to catch up the speed in which the fraud's happening outside. So that leads to a challenge for applications outside. Not having a handshake with the core network to implement the innovation that is necessary to block the frauds. That being the challenge itself, but still whatever the best that we could do in the application, we could do. So what's happening is now instead of the fraud management being the part of the core network, it has become a VAS, value-added services. That is where company like TechLab comes into picture as well. We build a firewall, which is going to be a kind of a value-added services which goes into the core network. Now, it's extremely difficult to manage the fraud if you do it in the conventional way, which mostly goes by the rule-based and logic-based approach. Now, that's what I said earlier. What we do in Tech Labs is not what others do it, but how we do it. it is very important that we bring in AI, effective and efficient AI, into our firewall so that it adapts, it learns the fraud trends, the fraud types, when it changes the pattern in the public. Now, we are one of probably the earliest people to adopt certain latest standards, latest technologies into AI in managing this complex fraud system. It could be as simple as early as adopting the LLM, right? Some of the products that we already have, even though it is getting matured in the technology space, we do not hesitate, because we being the lab, we don't hesitate to adapt and try it out. So probably this is one of the ways that we can probably nail down the fast pace, the fraud system that is coming up. You need to have AI system, effective and efficient AI system to address with a system outside of the core network. We wish we had a internal support in the software to address effectively within the core network, but it is not. So the only way is that we do it outside using our external software, right? Yeah.
Great. Now, one step to the enterprise via the operator groups, I'm going to select. To sit here, you talk to all of them, you have a relationship outside. Do you see that the APIs and the platforms is what the industry is in terms of the consumers of these services need? Are they asking for it? What they're asking?
I mean, absolutely. So the demand is definitely there, and we've seen that. And fortunately, of this whole migration or transition from a telco to techco has really helped us. But there are certain challenges as well. And innovation is one part to this, right? And as telcos, we don't have intellectual properties. That's one of the biggest challenges. So we are obviously looking at partnership models, working with multiple organizations who are well established in that, and help us tap into the respective domestic markets that we are targeting. Because as MNOs, we have the landscape, we have the reach to the enterprises and consumers within the market, right? So that's point number one. The challenge number two is the talent, which we miss, we don't talk about. The right, and as I think you mentioned, is also we are lazy and we have legacy networks. Even the people, how we have been structured, is we have a very specific mindset how we've been operating all the while. So that shift is also very equally important. And as Etisalat, we've been investing heavily in not only hiring the right resources as talent, but we have also been looking at upskill and reskill of our people, which means that getting them certified when we are prepared for the CPaaS platform that we are offering to the customers and enterprises. And I'm happy to say that we have also onboarded 3 to 4 major enterprises in UAE itself at this point of time. Where we see the demand coming is, which I mentioned, is API is commoditized from our standpoint, to be honest. And I'm sure John and the other guys would agree with me here, is especially when you talk about messaging APIs, it's been commoditized because it's a one-way street, right? There's no engagement. So what we are looking is how do we create a value proposition on top as a layer, and not just pure messaging APIs, which obviously comes from RCS, it comes from AI capabilities, giving data analytics to the customers and enterprises, which actually creates a margin layer for us. Because otherwise, it's really, you're looking at only authentication as a channel of communication at this point, which is also depleting pretty rapidly because of the growing cost, which he shared, is becoming challenging. So how do we, really capture these elements at risk, which is putting our business at risk, and kind of really go and find innovation around it. Now, also to the point you're mentioning is, in terms of the trust, the capability to handle the channels, the messaging channels effectively is, yes, we do see that if you can control the input through the APIs, the output can be controlled as well, right? By having standardized templates, by monitoring, whitelisting the sender IDs, by whitelist and having set of APIs, which basically can be your control checks and balances to keep in place, which I think is definitely needed at this point of time, which is missing. And yeah, going back to your point, there is definitely growth opportunity from our side.
Great, thank you. And you're already introducing almost the next topic that I was going to ask. We are running a bit short on time, so I'm just checking how many Q&A there might be. If not, we might have questions. Oh, we do have a couple. I will come to you shortly. So I'm going to ask you to be, we have some questions. I'm going to ask you to be fast now. But the tough questions for us, which is innovation is not just about technical innovations anymore. It's about commercial models. It's how you make money and fast with it. That's where innovation burns or succeed today. So I will come back to you as I've done before, but just because I'll start with commercial models and Twilio, John. What kind of innovation you're seeing there? Are things moving along with the platforms and the APIs?
Yeah, definitely. I think with the market shifts, it's very expensive in some parts of Asia, some parts of Middle East, Africa. I think the whole thing is that, and as I spoke to one operator this week, that we need to do things quite differently now, going forward, right? And commercial models, innovations in commercial models, especially in the area of SMS, needs to come in. I actually told him, look, what makes it, why can't the operator, why can't the carrier actually do like what the rest of the third-party OTTs are doing, right? What is so difficult? So, as we said, legacy or lazy, where the word is, it might be in the what we call the carriers, charging, rating, and billing systems. But if you can do something different, I can then offer that to my enterprise customers, who will then, be able to sort of grab hold and understand what it takes for, two ways, rich messaging, and on top of that, conversational commerce to come in, right? So I would say that there are blockers, but it's not impossible to remove those blockers. And Twilio is taking the huge steps in making sure that we sell what the customer wants, right? At the end of the day, they pay for us. So therefore, I think as aggregators, as carriers, we need to look at better models that actually grab the bite. Yeah. Let me put it that way.
Well, thank you. So I'll go to Murthy straight away because we touched on some of the BSS stories already, and here again. Are the operators and the industry ready for some of these commercial innovations on top? And you go a minute and a half to make it harder.
Anything in the commercial part, unfortunately, this is not something that we as a team apply our mind every time because it's mostly focusing on the technology part. But I was listening to him to understand because our GTS or the operators are the ones who focus on the commercial model for others. But we and the technology, we focus on how can we enable them to give a better commercial model, whether it's the kind of the software readiness, easy deployment, cost-effective way, how to do those things. So that's how we apply our mind to help come with a better model, whether it's revenue share or like, probably some other commercial model. But honestly, we don't apply that mind in our technology at this point in time when it comes to the commercial models.
And we'll get there in the preparation to, once we understand better the commercial models, let's go back to the enablers. So let's have Sandeep, which is next to you. So commercially, are we ready? You're talking to the customers. Are we innovating on commercial?
Yeah, it's going to be a spectrum. It's not going to be a zero-sum, binary. Can it be or can it not be commercialized? I think I'll pick up a couple of points from earlier discussions as well. I think you referred to the fact that how different is the combination of A2P and API versus CPaaS, right? If you do not make it different, nobody is going to pay you additionally for that. You've got to make it different. Your CPaaS has to be different from A2P delivered as APIs. CPaaS has to be a platform game. That's where that next step. I think we've done that layer of wrapping the A2P in an API format. The next step is to become that platform. Today we call CPaaS. I mean, 5 years ago we all used to call that A2P. Today we call it CPaaS. Tomorrow it could turn out to be something else altogether. Right? I think I've been on some of the forums where a similar question has also been asked about 5G, for example. Will 5G ever make money for telcos, right? Like, I mean, that's still out in the open. The jury is out there. And people have lots of answers for it, or some people don't believe in it at all as well. I think that is where I think Tushar was also referring to what he said about telcos don't have an asset, So it's a process of internal asset creation and then final value delivery. If your internal asset creation is strong foundationally and nimble and agile in customer-focused ways, then value delivery will happen and the customers will pay for it. And you could turn that around in different markets, pay differently. Like, we're sitting here in Mumbai. I think it's a cliche thing about whether Indian enterprises pay for software or not. We have, I live in Bangalore where, every corner shop is a 1,000-member software services team. So why do you pay for software if you can get it built and customized? So that is where I think internal asset creation and external value delivery, if done right, can happen. There are, maybe not in the closest home telecom industry, but there are industries where this has been possible. I mean, one of the industries which has run parallel, although not run too far ahead, is like, fintech and payment technologies, etc. You put in a payment gateway, you don't pay for the software, you just pay a commission through, which is a margin on top, right? So there are parallel industries where we can learn, and I do believe it is possible by not just wrapping it in a different paper, but creating strong value delivery channels for the end customers.
Very interesting. So, and then we heard in there who's paying somewhere. So I'm going to use the same words, and I ask that to Shit, because some people will say that we've heard GSMA, Kamara coming together, APIs, the operators themselves are softwareization there in the stack. Who's going to pay for that? Are you now paying some of that money on investment on that software yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, that's really true. So one fact is that a lot of that is being ridden on our network, but who's really, paying for it eventually? And I think a lot of economies now, or let's say rather countries like India, Indonesia, they are really looking at it very seriously, is how to really, and one is the monetization part, but the other aspect is also the data sovereignty that needs to also be staked and respected as well, right? Especially when you're talking about BFSI sector, the consumers are within the country, the data localization needs to be there, right? So who is paying for that eventually? At this point of time, unfortunately, it's not being captured, but I think slowly and gradually we'll see that change coming through as well and being applied. But yes, The other aspect is, obviously, when you talk about security as well, right? Because when you're exchanging on multiple platforms, for an example, in UAE, we know that liquor to a certain extent is not legal, but it's being still sold, right? Yeah. But when you look at certain WhatsApp messages and enterprises, they're basically using WhatsApp as a channel to circulate and promote, liquor within UAE, right? They're using that as a strategy, which is not brought under the purview or under the radar. So definitely there is, something needs to be done about it eventually.
Great. So and that opens the entire questions of we are reinventing what A2P almost is. It's not just the delivery of messages. It's the security. It's everything else that goes around it. So eventually somebody else will pay for it. And the importance of regulations. But I see how much time we have. So I'm going to end up on 2 questions. I'd still like to ask one question, telegraphic. It will be over time. But Zafir, you have the last one. Aren't you the lucky one here? Because all this discussion is about software integrations and more. So you should be you should be shiny with a big smile out there. Is it all good for you? Because all of this is going to be more integration work.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Thanks to all of our clients, and of course, I'm happy. Yes, I'll come back to the question you asked regarding the commercial innovations. So first of all, if you see that there is a lot of revenue leak on the gray channels for SMS or even for WhatsApp, right? Promoting liquor through gray WhatsApp channels. So I would like to, of course, I don't know how the telcos are going to take it, whether they're going to reduce those skyrocketing prices down. I'm looking at the counter as well. So, yeah. But I suggest that as a software platform provider, we can create a blend of all these channels, CPaaS channels, and because at the end of the day, it's the enterprise who is paying for it, paying for everything. So try to reduce those prices for them. And I do believe that, AI needs to be implemented. Like I'll take an example of e-end. So the resources required for sender ID whitelisting, the content whitelisting, and this and that, and the time consumed on that. So an enterprise comes to you today, and he can't send his content 20 days down the line, right? Because of these complications. So yes, APIs can be innovated there to have it seamlessly within like 5-10 minutes. Like we have the template approval in WhatsApp. So these things, AI, and of course. The blend of these channels would be able to get the commercials, the prices down for the enterprises. They would want to use more and more the clean channels rather than the gray channels, and that's how the revenue will grow, and that's how all of us, the ecosystem is going to make more money, and of course the enterprises are going to pay less.
Few words that were very positive we heard, growing happiness in the industry. Well, I almost tempted to finish there, and the time is up, but I did promise one question, if it is telegraphic, and please, and then I will ask you, one of you, to answer.
Yes, kindly raise your hand. Please introduce your name, your company name, followed with your question.
Hi, I am Alok Maurya. I work for Globe Tele Services and GTS Tech Labs. I have a question specifically for Tushit. Middle East, the region that you are operator as well as serving as a CPaaS player. I want the answer as perspective of a CPaaS player. The restrictions that that area has across the countries on VoIP or other things, does it hold you as a CPaaS player back for more open API conversation and using different platform for more open communication? And how you, as a CPaaS player, you are coming out of that?
Yeah. Thanks for your question. So definitely Middle East market is very heavily regulated, you're right. And not just when it comes to messaging business, but even voice as well as an industry, right? So how we are tackling is, which I mentioned previously, is we are looking at where our assets are when it comes to UAE, Saudi, Egypt, Morocco, because the regulations require you to have your data center infrastructure, recording everything locally, right? So given as an MNO, we have an advantage. Now, who do we go with? That approach is something else, right? So that's the principal question that we need to ask, number one. Number two, yes, when you look at Etisalat, and Enterprise, is a BSP itself. So in last year, we have seen 10% growth coming as well as a BSP in the market. So the demand is there, and which cannot be less acknowledged. So we have to keep up. Now, how do we do it under the purview of the local regulation? That needs to be seen, right? So yes, there is a challenge, but we are working closely with the regulators as well on how we can identify ways, areas to overcome that challenge as well. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Definitely the time is up, so what a bad moderator I've been. But I'm going to ask you one more question. You're only allowed to raise your hands. Don't look at me. Is RCS going to be providing additional growth to this market? Raise your hand if you believe so. We go one, we go two. Okay, maybe, I don't know that. You calculate yourself how much is that. But definitely the time is up. So please help me to thank John Chua from Telio, Zafar Waizi from Al Mukit, Tushit Sef from Etisalat, Ian, Sandeep Rakesh from Mobitex in Bix, and then Murthy Munyabapa from GTS Tech Labs. Thank you all.